All right, welcome fans to another episode here of Ranking the Albums. Today we are doing America's greatest rock and roll band, none other than Aerosmith, who have a total of 15 albums out that we're going to rank. And my special guest to help me do this today is the foremost authority here on the Joe Perry project and Joe Perry and everything else Aerosmith related. KATY Nathan, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really cool to be on your show. I've seen some of your episodes before, and I already know I'm going to piss off a bunch of people with my music opinions. So I'm excited.
All right, let's start right off here because we got 15 albums to rank here. Let's go with you're going to go first, and then I'll come up with mine. Let's go with your number 15.
My number 15, so that my least favorite. All
Yep.
right. Well,
Mm-hmm.
this is not going to make people happy. My least favorite album is Get a Grip. It's a great album. Don't get me wrong. I think there are some really standout songs. I really like Fever. I like Walk On Down because I partial to Joe Perry's voice, and Get a Grip, the title track, is a great song. But for me, I'm not really a big fan of the ballads. Amazing, Crying, and Crazy arguably all sound the same. Um, Again, great songs, but they have much better ballads and more meaningful songs in their catalog, which we will talk about further as we go down the list. But for me, it's just never personally clicked with me.
Okay, fair enough. So for my number 15, that is it going to be Honking on Bobo. I'm just not a fan of that album only because, most of it's covers, but I don't know. I'm just not really into the selection of the songs on there. Unfortunately, it's a good album. You can put it on and get into a lot of the songs, but it just doesn't have that traditional Aerosmith vibe that all their other albums pretty much have. So for me, I wasn't a really big fan on a lot of those songs during their live set when they came to town on those tours for the pushing the honking on Bobo. I felt there was a few better songs they could have played that would have probably, been more to my liking, and so that's stuck on 15. I don't think they'll ever make an album to go below that one, in my opinion.
No, I think that is completely valid because there are a couple of songs that they easily could have done. Like I know Joe Perry sang Red House on the Jam Band CD that he did in 1969. Could have easily put that on there. And then Manish Boy, he covered a lot during like the Get a Grip tour. So I
Hmm.
think they could have put a couple of songs like that, bring back some classics that they used to do live. I mean, they did do Stop Messing Around, which was frequent in their sets in the
Yeah.
90s. Um, but I wish they would have brought some more stuff out of the vault that wasn't just those songs. Although I will um, give you more of my opinion on Honkin' on Bobo as we continue.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's go up to the next one. That would be number 14. What do you got for yourself there?
I don't think this one is really going to come as a surprise to anyone. Just push play. Again, not a bad album. It's got some really solid songs. I really like Under My Skin. I love Beyond Beautiful. I think that song is really cool. I love the ringing of the phone at the beginning, the F that just rings out for that extended period of time. I think that's awesome. Um, and then the only song in Aerosmith's catalog that is a duet, Drop Dead Gorgeous, great song. I really like that song. And again, this I just think that it's a little too commercial for me. I do really like the big heavy sound of it because I tend to gravitate towards albums that have a more clear cut sound. However, I think it was just a little too commercial. And especially what they did with their image at that time, like Steven with the freaking blonde streaks in his hair. I did not dig that at all. That was not a look. Um, Again, it's a solid album, but they have better in their catalog.
Well, that's the first one we agree on. I got Just Push Play at number 14 as well. So we actually agree on that one. Um, so basically, it does have a lot of different flavors of music, can we say, on some of their songs compared to what most fans would be used of hearing from an Aerosmith album. Obviously, the big hit here, Jaded, was, for some reason, I still am not sick of that song. I can actually listen to that one and not get sick of it. I know other people it's different for, but that one, I actually, that to me is probably one of the best songs, probably one of the last best songs they've written in a while. But like Beyond Beautiful, co-written with Steven and Joe and Marty Fredrickson, another great song, just like you said. I totally agree with you on that. The song Just Push Play, not bad. Fly Away From Here, Sunshine, two ballads, but they're definitely not the worst ballads Aerosmith's ever done. But I can see where some people are just kind of balladed out per se when it comes to. Although I think Fly Away From Here was pretty cool. Over here, at least, it never really got overplayed. So maybe that's why if I heard it a lot more, maybe I would have gotten sick of it over time. But never really heard it ever on the radio much here, which actually probably was a good thing.
Yeah, and another ballad that neither of us mentioned was Advent Garden. I think that song is absolutely gorgeous, and I've always found it a little scary when, like, after 30 seconds of the song ending, it plays like the mellowed down version of Part of Under My Skin, which is really random. And it actually happens at the end of a B-side called Face, which is also on this album, which which I've always found terrifying. I remember the first time I listened to the song, I'm like, wait, the song is still going, but there's nothing playing. Like, what's going on? And then I just hear, do it, do it, do it. I'm like, what is going on? This is scary.
Yeah.
um, but I think that song is really cool too.
All right, so we agree on 14. Let's go down to number 13 and see where we stand.
Oh, people are not going to like this one either because I know some die-hard fans of this record. But Done with Mirrors. Again, it's a really good album. It's not their best, but I do have some personal favorites on here. I do really like She's on Fire. I think that song is gorgeous. I love Joe Perry's slide work. I think it never fails to amaze me. I think it's great. And then Darkness is also a great song, very rarely talked about, and actually wasn't even featured on the vinyl version of Done with Mirrors and came out later as a single. But when you get re-releases of the album, Darkness is featured as the last song. This is a little tidbit. My Fist Your Face is also a jam. Joe Perry actually incorporated that into his live sets a few years ago when he toured Japan. And then The Reason to Dog is a great song. Sheila is a great song. Obviously, their remake of Let the Music Talking is great. I prefer the original though. Another opinion you won't hear a lot, but I do really like the original. Again, it's a great album. I think there was something missing that I can't really explain it, but there just isn't that punch that I usually get from an Aerosmith song.
I think it was kind sounds like to me it was kind of rushed to get out there because they only had 9 songs, and even at that, Darkness was only on the CD and the cassette for some weird reason, like you said. So I'm not sure why, if they just didn't they ran out of time. Maybe the record company was pushing to get the album out, by a certain point. I've never really heard the whole story on that, so I'm not quite sure. But that it does sound kind of incomplete. But I hear you on that. Definitely my ranking will be a little bit different, but I agree with you. It's definitely missing something compared to some of the other albums for sure. All right, so you got 13. Mine is actually Music from Another Dimension, which I like that album. I like it. It's definitely a good album. If you listen to these songs, a lot of them. The only one I even heard more than anything on was just the single. It's like I didn't really hear much as far as songs on the radio. Our radio station here, they're stuck in 1979. They never hardly play anything past that, unfortunately, which, kind of not good for people who like these classic rock bands that still are going strong here. But What Could Have Been Love, I feel that's a great song. Another one that was written with Tyler and Marty Fredrickson. Um, but yeah, I mean, actually, there's a lot of albums that have like, well, this is one of those albums where there's a bunch of bonus tracks if you bought a certain edition. I think it was the deluxe, and there's a song on there
Mhm.
called "Sunny Side of Love" that I really love. I really love that
Love
song for
that
some
song.
reason. It just really sticks to you like glue, that one, if you listen to it. And that one should have been on the initial album. Maybe if they would have pushed it as a single, maybe that would have done a little bit better. Um, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of good songs on this album. But I think because of the time that it came out in, had it been out 10 years earlier, maybe it would have done a lot better. But we were getting to the area where CDs were starting to get phased out. A lot of people just weren't buying them. The band did take a long time to come up. This is their follow-up to Bobo, which, they didn't write any of those songs except for one. And then so the real at last album they made was 2001, Just Push Play. So they went quite a number of years for guys who were putting albums out once a year back in the old days. They took their time on this one. Overall it's definitely a good album. I think it's a little too long in the respect. There are a few songs on there that kind of sound watered down, kind of like filler that I could definitely do without. And if they weeded out the filler and got the album down to maybe like 11 or 12 songs, I think they would have had a better result.
No, I completely agree with that. I think, songs like We All Fall Down and Another Last Goodbye, I mean, great songs, but I think we could really do without them, especially given some of the songs that were on the bonus album, including Up on the Mountain, which was actually an outtake from the Nine Live sessions. And that's a great song. And you can definitely hear some of the Nine Lives quality to it, especially in the bridge.
Hmm.
And even in the guitar solo, which I love the guitar solo in that song. And then also Oasis in the Night, which is my username on Instagram. I'm of course putting a plug in there. That was written for Billy. Joe sings that song, and I think it's not his best vocal performance, but I think that song has really meaningful lyrics, and it's not like anything like unique or crazy, but it's just a relaxing, pretty tune, and I really like it. And like you said, I really like Sunny Side of Love. I think that song is a groove, and I think more people need to talk about it because it is a really good song. But I'll save the rest of my thoughts for later.
All right. Sounds good. So that brings us up to number 12. Getting into the dirty
Oh,
dozen here.
yep, another one people aren't gonna like. Night in the Ruts. All right, so again, it's a great album. Do not get me wrong. I think there's some really solid songs on here. I think Riverhead Woman is a great song. I think Bone to Bone is a great song. Mia's absolutely gorgeous. Um, but a lot of the songs, because of the turmoil that was going on in the band, I mean, all the tapes, some of the songs were already recorded between Perry and Whitford before Perry's departure, and then eventually Whitford's departure from the band. Um, so some of Perry's guitar work is on there, but some of it is also Richie Supa's. So there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that magic that was lost in the process. Like I know Perry didn't play on Mia. Um, that's an example. And I also really like cheese. I like cheesecake, and I especially like Perry's slide work on that song. I mean, the lyrics I could do without, but that's a whole other conversation. Um, but that's a great song. And then 3 Mile Smile, which fun fact was originally called I Live in Connecticut, which is true. I do live in Connecticut. Don't come here. It's a very boring state. But Aerosmith does have a song about us, which is very cool. But 3 Mile Smile is probably the most standout song for me. I think it's a great song. Um, the riff is catchy as hell. The lyrics are pretty cool too. So Yeah, again, no complaints about the album. I just think again they have better in their catalog, and there's
Mhm.
definitely a little bit of that lost magic.
Okay. All right. So we're kicking off. My number 12 is going to be none other than Nine Lives. Um, Goes down to number 12. That's another album to me. It just seems like it's too long, too many songs on the album. I saw the tour, loved the tour because they didn't play it. They played a handful of songs off the album live, and they picked the right ones for the most part. But for some reason that album just a little too long in the tooth for me. It seems like the CD age sometimes hurts a band in a way because back in the old days they would do like 9, 10 songs, and they really had those 9 or 10 songs, really good. They narrowed them down, and those albums you can pretty much play all the way through without skipping stuff like that. But Nine Lives, I mean, it has its positives. Obviously, the title cut, that's what they opened up with on the tour. Falling in Love is Hard on the Knees, the big video they had there. Taste of India, that was one they played live. Obviously Pink is on there. A lot of people can't stand that song, but I can dig it. I can get into Pink. Kiss Your Past Goodbye, Fallen Angels. I mean, there's definitely some good songs on there, but there's also some that they just never grew on me. I know other people have tried to push them on me. Some of my friends, because I got a friend that's a real big Nine Lives fan. He just loves that album. That's actually his favorite. And then, but I mean, like I said, I like the album, but it's just a little too long.
Nope, I completely understand, and I agree that some of it is very long. I mean, Fallen Angels is 8 minutes long, and a lot of it is just an instrumental. I mean, the ending is like what 2 3 minutes long. It's beautiful, but it's a little too long. But it is a great album. I'll get into my thoughts on that later because I
Okay.
do have strong opinions.
Okay. All right. So it looks like we're going down to number 11 now.
Oh, another one people aren't gonna like. Draw the line. Again, great songs. I love Bright Light Fright. I love the energy of that song. I love Perry's vocals. I think that song particularly shows off his vocal abilities, and a little bit of his range too, because he hits I think it's an F#4, which is fairly impressive for someone who doesn't really sing. Um, and I think the title track is awesome. Again, Paris slide work, awesome. Sight for Sore Eyes, which fun fact was co-written by David Johansen of the New York Dolls, who eventually worked on Joe Perry's Sweet Soul Manifesto, which came out in 2018. I think that song is a groove. Joe Perry actually did that song live back in 2009, 2010 with Hog and Grow and that formation of the Joe Perry project. And I think they did a great version of that song. They did it a whole step down, which sounded, I think, awesome. Because while the song is originally in the key of E, but they did it in the key of D live, which I thought worked perfectly. And then I love their cover of No Cow Blues, especially when they did it on um, Unplugged. That was awesome. And then Critical Mass, obviously great song. Kings and Queens, Brad Whitford classic, and The Hand That Feeds is awesome. I mean, again, not a bad song off the album, just they're albums that I happen to like more.
All right. Sounds good there. All right. So we're up to number 11 again for me now. And mine is going to be one I think that you mentioned here, Get a Grip. Um, the album, like you said, it definitely has a lot of good songs on it. Don't get us wrong regarding that. How can you go wrong doing start kicking it off with Eat the Rich, which is exactly what they did on the tour when they came here back in '93. Um, they worked with a lot of people on this album, a lot of outside people. Lenny Kravitz does some work on here. Obviously, Richie Supa co-wrote Amazing with Tyler there, and then you got the Jack Blaze, Tommy Shaw from the Damn Yankees doing Shut Up and Dance. They did some of the writing for that. It was a lot of different writers for this album
Mhm.
for sure. I think the highlights for me on this album were obviously the title track. Um, That's a good song. Living on the Edge is one I can do without. I'm sorry. I've seen Aerosmith every single time I've seen Aerosmith almost lately. They play that song and I could definitely, it's 6 minutes long. I would have rather seen them cut it out, play a couple of the older ones to make up for the space they waste on Living on the Edge. I don't know. That song just does me in. But Crying, they play that all the time. That's one of the songs that and Crazy is actually kind of underrated in my opinion. I know it charted and it did well, but that song actually stands out really good for me. Amazing, like you said. Another one that's kind of long, but overall, it's definitely one of their best known ballads that they actually don't play too much live. And you don't really hear that song too often anymore, really. You never see it in a set list. I couldn't tell you when the last time they actually played it live, but it's probably been about 15 years, probably more than likely.
Yeah, I actually think they did it live in South America about 10 years ago. It's very hard to sing. I'm a vocalist, so I would know it is a very
Hmm.
difficult song to sing, especially like middle, because that song is in C major, and like middle C is very hard for most singers because that's where their head voice meets their chest voice, so it's very difficult for people to belt out those notes. But another little tidbit that you didn't mention was that Don Henley of the Eagles sings background vocals on Amazing, which I think is a really cool touch because the Eagles are another great band. My dad's favorite band. When he
Hmm.
watches this, he'll be like, "Oh my god, she mentioned me! Wow." But yeah, I think that's a really cool tidbit too. But I agree with everything you said. I think that there are again some standouts on it, but I think it's just a little too commercial, as I mentioned.
Yeah. All right, so let's go on down to the top 10. It looks like we're flying through this now.
Wow. All
Would
right. So this is one you already mentioned. It's Music for Another Dimension. So I think there's some really solid songs on here. Out Goes the Lights is a great song. I remember, I think it was in like sixth or seventh grade. I would go to sleep listening to like the drum line at the end of that song because I just thought it was no, you're never going to hear anyone say this, but this is my sort of catchphrase. I think it's an eargasm. It's awesome. And then obviously all the bonus tracks that I was talking about earlier, Sunny Side of Love. I love that song. And Oasis in the Night and Up on the Mountain. Um, and then I think Oh Yeah is a great song. Fun fact, Joe Perry is actually supposed to sing lead vocals on that song. And then it was supposed to be a duet. And then Steven ended up just doing the vocals, but Joe Perry was the one that wrote that song. Um, and I think Legendary Child is a great song. I actually really like the video for that song, even though it is a little strange. And then Something, which was actually an outtake from the Nine Live sessions, is a great song. Um, that was actually written about Tim Collins, who is not a great person, but it's a great song. It's always the worst situations that make for the best lyrics and the best music. And I think Closer is another deep cut off that album that's really good. The one song I cannot stand off of this record is Can't Stop Loving You. I know there are some people who really like it. I have never been able to get into it. I think it's really annoying. I mean, Carrie Underwood, Steven Tyler, they have great vocals, but they do not work well together. I am sorry to anyone who likes that song, but I personally do not like that song.
I agree. I'm not a fan of that one either. All right, so we got that's number 10 for you, and mine is one that you mentioned yourself before. It's going to be Done with Mirrors. The Ted Templeman produced Done with Mirrors, which came out in 1985 back in November. So the cool thing was I actually saw Aerosmith a few months before this album came out. It was actually in August of '85, and they actually played two songs in concert from the album before it came out. Obviously, Let the Music Do the Talking and the My Fist Your Face, which was pretty cool to see before they even had them out there. So the first time I ever actually heard that song was live and in concert. So
Wow.
that was awesome. Because I never really seen them before the album usually came out. They usually didn't go on tour until the album's been out most of the time.
Mhm.
So, like I said, it sounded like they definitely because they were still doing gigs for the once they got back together from 84 to 85. And the cool thing was that when they first got back together, when they did play Let the Music Do the Talking, they actually did the version that Joe's played with his band. And then somewhere along the line, Tyler decided, hey, we got to change this up. And he penned some new lyrics and they kind of rewrote it a little bit to make it what you know as the version that is on Done with Mirrors today. So that
Well, of
was
course, he had to put his stamp on it.
well, Joe wrote it for Steven, but thing is, Joe Perry still gets the full songwriting credit for it, I guess, because it's his song initially. So, um, you had mentioned Darkness. That's one of those, you know, a lot of it's probably one of the most underrated Aerosmith tracks, just because a lot of people that just aren't really, never got no airplay really. A lot of people just aren't really aware of it, but that's definitely one of those great songs that definitely is very underrated. Gypsy Boots is another one that I really, that was one of the standouts for me when I first got this album and I heard it. Gypsy Boots, I still have a soft spot for it today. That song, another Tyler Perry classic right there. I mean, there's a couple of the songs are a little just average, but like you mentioned, the Hop, that's kind of just an average song, even though it looks like everybody on the band got credit for a songwriting credit for that one. She's on Fire, that's a great guitar song right there, another Tyler Perry jam. What do you think of The Reason a Dog?
You know, the lyrics are interesting. I'll say that. But I think the song it's simple. It's definitely not anything like hardcore, like Nobody's Fault, which I will get into later because I have
Mm,
very strong opinions on that song. But I think it's a solid song. I mean, it's not, She's on Fire or Let the Music Do the Talking, but it's still a good
mhm.
song.
Yeah, and then the other one that I almost forgot to mention here that I really dig is Shame on You. That's one of those another song that you could definitely feel, you know, with the riff and the whole song in general. It's one of those great Aerosmith classics that looks like Tyler was the only one that got credit for that one. But you had to figure Perry had something to do with the riff there,
Oh, definitely.
because that's
That riff is
definitely
way too
screaming Joe
cool.
Perry. Yeah, it's definitely. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I think they kept the production simple and they just really didn't get too complex. Everybody says that this was supposed to be their big comeback album and it never turned out to be. But at the same time, like every single Aerosmith album, except for the Music from Another Dimension, has at least gone gold or platinum. So, it still
Hmm.
went gold. So, that's, still saying something considering, that's when they really didn't, they weren't around for, you know, much of the 80s, because Perry was doing the project and Aerosmith only made the one album. And then it took a while for everybody to get back together to come up with this album. And then that did lead into their big comeback eventually, but just not on this particular album, unfortunately.
I mean, that's what happened with their first album, then Get Your Wings. It's the same situation. I mean, their first album got buried into obscurity because of Greetings from Ashbury Park by Bruce Springsteen, which came out the same week as Aerosmith, and was on the same label too, Columbia.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's pretty much the same situation. Obviously there wasn't like a Bruce Springsteen album coming out on the same label at the same time. But besides the point, I mean, Done with Mirrors is a great album, but I think they really hit home with Permanent Vacation,
Yeah,
which I will get into
yeah.
later.
The other thing that a lot of people say Done with Mirrors kind of did them in was the backwards lettering on the concept there. I mean, nobody else had done anything like that really at that point, so that, it kind of helped make it stick out, but I don't know. I don't know how it didn't do better than what it did. Maybe they just needed a better cover. Um, it's hard to say, but a lot of people feel
Mhm.
that the actual problem with trying to read it was one of the reasons why some people didn't buy it, which I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, I definitely agree with that because one of my hobbies is collecting Aerosmith shirts. I have over 100 shirts, and sometimes I'll like wear some from Done with Mirrors, and people will try to read it, and they're like, "What does that say?" And I'm like, "It says Done with Mirrors. If you flip it around, it says Done with Mirrors." And they're like, "Oh, well, that makes sense. I couldn't even read it before you told me that." And I'm like, "Well, that kind of makes sense. It's kind of the purpose." Um, and I know that was I'm pretty sure it was Tom Hamilton's idea to flip it around, but I think, like you said, it would have done better had it not been like that, because it's definitely not common for bands to, mirror the front cover of their album. But I think it's a cool concept, and I think the Aerosmith fans appreciate it. But for outsiders, they're like, "What the fuck is this?"
Exactly. All right, so that was number 10. We're going to the top nine now. What do you got for your number nine?
Honkin' on Bobo. I know that you have strong opinions on this album, but that I think it's cool that it was recorded in the Patch and the Boneyard, which unfortunately does not exist anymore because Joe Perry sold to the house that the Boneyard existed in.
Hmm.
But besides the point, this album just really goes back to some of their rock and roll roots. I really love Backpack Train. That song is one of my favorite Aerosmith songs and my favorite song that Joe Perry sings. The Grind is such a groovy song. It's in a very unique key. I'm pretty sure it's in the key of C sharp minor. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's a great song, very groovy. I could really listen to that when I'm sleeping, when I'm going for a run, whatever. It's a great song. I really like their cover of Roadrunner. I think it just really packs a punch. Um, and then Never Loved a Girl. That's a great song. I really like what they did with Jesus is on the Main Line. I there's actually a video of them doing that song on YouTube of them like recording it for the
Hmm.
album. Um, and it's just so cool because they're like all in the same room with just some mics hooked up above them. And I mean, that's as raw as you could get. Like that's basically another unplugged. And I thought that was really cool. And then obviously Stop Messing Around. I mean, again, I am partial to Joe Perry's vocals. Even though he's not a technical singer, he definitely has pipes when he sings.
Hmm.
Not all the time, but some of the time. And especially in that song, it really shines through. I know that people have mixed reviews on it because it is not a like an Aerosmith album per se, but it definitely got them sort of back on the right track
Hmm.
from Just Push Play, because that I mean I've never met an Aerosmith fan who said that their favorite album is Just Push Play. Not one, and I've met many.
Yeah, that's I hear you on that. All right. Let's see. So number nine for me, Permanent Vacation, the number nine album for Aerosmith. It seems like this album hasn't really aged that well over time, which I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, for the most part, I really like um, a good 75% of it. There's a few tracks that I could do without. Um, but I think the good thing is that it definitely brought him back. Ragdoll was huge, Angel was huge. A couple of the other songs on here, you know, actually were should have done even better than they did. Like Hearts Done Time and Magic Touch. Where do you find a great 1-2 punch like that? That's a great start to an album. And they actually played both of those songs on the early part of the Permanent Vacation tour, which was cool. I saw it up. Let's see, I saw it a couple times. No, actually, you know what? It was the Pump tour. Actually, they played it on, which was kind of weird. That was the Pump. Yeah, yeah, I was back in 1990 when I saw them do both those songs. So they actually played it a little later on down the road, which is kind of weird. Because by then Pump was already out, and that was the Pump tour. Cimaraya is definitely one of the album's most underrated songs. And then the songs I could do without basically are the movie, Girl Keeps Coming Apart, and St. John. Those three songs, if they would have kicked them off and maybe put one more decent track on, I think that album would have done even better, really, to tell you the truth. Um, Interesting note, Girl Keeps Coming Apart is actually only been played live 5 times, and I got to see it once. So that's a real rare track of them playing that one. So they
Mhm.
played it like the second night of they put it on the Permanent Vacation, the first leg. They played it for like the first month sporadically because I seen them twice on that tour that first month. They played it in Buffalo on the 17th of October, but the week after when I seen it in Rochester, they didn't touch it. So they only ended up playing it 5 times. So that's one of those rarities you don't come across too often.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
actually,
I
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, another rare thing was, have you ever seen an Aerosmith show, full show without Dream On? That's a rarity.
Oh, I have not, but that must have been a treat.
Well, it depends. I like Dream On. I would have rather seen Walk This Way not be played, but that one, don't get me started on that. We'll talk more about that down the road here. But yeah, so it's interesting that the one time I seen them, they came here on the Motley Crue tour, and they didn't play Dream On. I don't know if they skipped it by accident, and I still don't know the story behind it, or if it was on the initial set list. You'd almost have to think it was, but for whatever reason, it got skipped over.
They just didn't feel like it, I guess.
So yeah, so that's basically it on that one for me. I know you're gonna probably have a lot more to say about it when it comes your turn there, because you haven't picked that one
Oh,
yet.
yeah.
All right, let's
Mhm.
go down to your number 8.
All right. I am gonna put Rock in a Hard Place as number 8. This album did take a while to grow on me. I didn't listen to it for years because I'm like, oh, well, Joe Perry and Brad Whitford aren't on the album. Bullshit. It is a great album. I think there's some solid tracks on here. I think Bolivian Ragamuffin is one of the grooviest songs in Aerosmith's catalog. Especially the ending of that song. That is fucking awesome. And then Lightning Strikes is classic. The music video is a little cringeworthy, but I think it's definitely like the epitome of an 80s rock video. Bitches Brew is a great song. I love their cover of Cry Me a River. I think Rock in a Hard Place, the title track, is awesome. And I think Jig is Up is kind of a response to Bolivian Ragamuffin. I've always kind of seen them in the same light since I'm pretty sure they're either in the same key or similar keys. I think they're both in the key of E major. But they're both really good. And then Push Comes to Shove, I prefer Joe Perry's version. I know they're two different songs titled the same. I prefer Joe Perry's version, but I do like Aerosmith's version of Push Comes to Shove. And then a quick tidbit about Jailbait. Um, if you have the Pandora's box set, which I do, if you look through the booklet and look at the description of Jailbait, Joe Perry's like, "Oh, I'm jealous of this riff. I wish I could have played on it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's an awesome riff. It's catchy as hell." And I don't think they've written anything like Jailbait since it's been released, and I don't think they'll ever write a song like it again because it's that good.
A great way to kick off the album, that's for sure. All right, so that was number 8 for you, and that brings me to my choice, which is Night in the Ruts. And I mean, actually, considering Joe Perry isn't on Rockin' a Hard Place, I'm actually impressed that you actually picked it that low. So I was actually surprised by that. So that was interesting. But yeah. So mine's Night in the Ruts for number 8. That's one of those albums that it it came out. at a weird time because, like you said, there was a lot of stuff going on with the band at the time. Perry started recording on it, and then I guess Supa came in. I'm not sure. Did At that point, Crespo did play on 3 Mile Smile.
Hmm.
I think that was it on that, according to most of the things I've read up on it there. But Joe, and it's weird because Joe does play on 3 Mile Smile himself, which is kind of weird that they both supposedly played on that song. I don't know. I'd like to get more info on that to see what that's all
Hmm.
about. But, no surprise, obviously. It's hard to believe that they actually put a song like that on there. It kind of tells about the band's history, and then all of a sudden they break up and everything just went haywire there. Right after that, you figure a song like that would have reunited everybody a little bit more and everything, but that wasn't the case. Chiquita, that's another great song. Yeah, that riff, the 3 Mile Smile, is awesome. I just love it. Yeah, and Perry's actually credited with writing 3 Mile Smile too, which is interesting there. And then obviously Bone to Bone, yeah, that's a great Joe Perry riff right there. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
Aerosmith actually played that on the Permanent Vacation tour. Great to hear that one live. That's the only time I've ever actually heard it live too, was on that tour. Man, if they played something like that nowadays, I think people would just eat it right up.
Yeah, people would actually go see Aerosmith because they literally do the same sets and have been doing the same sets since I was probably conceived.
Yeah, there's a lot more they really need to do with that, but unfortunately, it seems like things are winding down for them more than anything. But I'd like to see them go out with one good, really give the fans something to remember going out in some style here.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's what my album here. I don't really have too much to say about it. They threw the Yardbirds cover on there. Think about it, which could have done without that. But like you said, Mia, that is a great song. Another great song on that album. So I mean, it definitely has a few standouts, but it just wasn't as good as many of the. It's probably the weakest album of the '70s albums, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Again, like I mentioned, I just think there was a lot of magic that was lost within that album just
Hmm.
because there was so much turmoil going on. And,
Oh yeah.
Joe Perry claims that 1979 was the worst year of his life. So, a lot of that is it's sort of transpired into the music.
Hmm.
And so that magic was lost, which is funny because Joey Kramer was going through a depressive state during the recording of Nine Lives. Um, and I actually find that album to have a lot more spunk and energy than Night in the Ruts. Obviously, very different situations that they were both going through, but just something I thought I would know.